the paradox here is that builders can be histrionic storytellers. And that is an important skill to have. The ability to get somebody to see something as bigger than what it looks like is part of inducing the support in the chicken and egg problem that is a builder of like, how do I get users if I have no money? And how do I get money if I have no users? Well, you got to make somebody believe. Yeah. You got to make somebody see something that isn't there yet.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hope Axis. I think this is my 30th episode. We will see. I'm sure that the commenters will have a better sense of this. And we're
not going to call it the Hope Allies at this point in history.
Oh, the historical connotations. Yeah, but I'm counting on the math nerds more than the
World War II historians. I get you.
See, but the Hope Allied forces, that would be amazing.
Yeah, Axis is good. The truth is,
I'm Central European. We're always in the
power produces hope. Much more than friendship does, as much as I'm a fan of friendship. Anyway, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Many things can go wrong. So, guys, you already got a little bit of a taster of how this episode is going to be going. Roy Bahat is here, my friend, investor, mentor from Bloomberg Beta, president of Bloomberg Beta, one of the most interesting people on Medium and very loyal to the format. So if there's one thing you continue reading on Medium, make that Roy Bahat's essays.
I think of it more as like it just happens to be the hosting platform for my blog. I tried to switch to Substack, but it's too hard.
It's too hard to switch.
At some point, I'll fix it.
I
also don't want to spam everybody too often, but
No, but it's perfect. It's perfect. It's good to be contrarian about some things, and they are beautiful. They look.
That's it. No, my biggest contrarian thing is I'm an Android, so that's my biggest. Yeah.
Are you European? You're both an Android.
If you can get over the fact that I don't like sports, that I only started liking music really in my 40s, and that I'm an Android, and I only really started liking dogs in my 40s. If you can get over those things, then maybe we can be friends.
I think you could like fit in like the Netherlands or something. That would be.
I think I'm in another life. I might have been Dutch.
I can't imagine you there. It's too small and too flat. You're calling in from some much less sweltering states than I am. I'm in Manhattan and I don't have AC yet in my apartment, so it's a very European raw dogging situation. But you're somewhere in the mountains?
I'm in Milwaukee, not the mountains. Yeah, Milwaukee lakes. Yes, I'm in Milwaukee, where we live part-time.
Nice.
Swing state voters, America. I think actually the neighborhood we're in Milwaukee, I just told my wife, might be the greatest neighborhood in America. But that's a conversation for another day.
Might be low-key, no big deal, but we're just.
Well, I mean, if you had to define what a quintessentially American neighborhood is, it's, it's diverse. The public school is good.
Yeah.
It looks beautiful. It's close to urban amenities. I'm a block from the lake, and so between New York, San Francisco, and Milwaukee, we're tri-coastal.
That's perfect. You have to send me some photos that sound amazing. And this, I'm sure, is a well-deserved break from the great cities where you spend your every waking hour otherwise. The theme for this episode will be building great things while history is going insane. I think this is a shared obsession that you and I have. We both, in our own ways, work with talent and discourse and trying to create positive change in culture. Culture is somehow the most difficult things in the world, both in terms of productification and monetization, but also there is so much inertia, right? People don't really like cultural change. We like novelty, we like new songs and trinkets, but we don't like structural cultural changes. That scares us. So those of us who work on this problem, we often go via specific things to be built and specific builders. You as an investor obviously attack this really, really big problem from the builder's perspective. And so my first question to you would be, if you were to describe this era to an alien from the point of view of the builder, what kind of era are we in right now? What does it do to the builders?
Oof.
This is a light podcast, by the way, no big questions.
I think that it's an era from the builder's perspective of enormous power. It's always been a pain in the ass to build stuff. And the frustrating thing about building stuff is, let's take the example of a restaurant. You really want to distinguish yourself on the ambiance, the service, the food, but then you got to get your liquor license and all this must do clean the bathrooms kind of stuff. Like the bathrooms have to be clean, but nobody goes to the restaurant because the bathroom is clean. And a lot of building is always like that. The amount of time a software developer used to spend setting up their IDE, the operational mechanics of starting a company. And it's never been less like that than now. And I think on the one hand, that makes it easier. And ease for builders is both good and bad. So obviously it's good in the sense that you can build more things, you can try stuff, a wider range of people can be invited into building. I mean, vibe coding is nothing to me if not a big red carpet for everybody who has yet to build something to try. And at the same time, ease produces lazy thinking. And sometimes lazy thinking is good because you try something you hadn't really thought about. But to the extent many of the sins of the builder are building something that, while profound, has unanticipated dangerous consequences, or thinking it's easy. A lot of people are going to sit on the geyser and think they know how to fly. And so it's like all things, it's mixed. But I think that the word to me is power. And so it has never been an era where the builders have more power now than they have ever had.
You must be seeing a lot of vibe coded projects landing on your metaphorical desk from builders. I mean,
yes and no. I mean, I think that one thing about the vibe coded projects is that it may not need VC as often. And if they don't need VC, by all means, please don't raise VC. The only reason is because you have no other choice. But I tell you, and we see disqualifying things. Like, it's shocking to me that people are like, I want to raise money to build the prototype. I'm like, dude, we can make the prototype under the table on our cell phones in this meeting. And, as I know you had Haya on as an early Replit investor, as the first VC and second investor after Christina Cacioppo from Vanta, I am a fan, obviously. And I think that it's more that great builders are selective about which new tools to internalize. You can't try everything. And the person who's like always using the latest thing for sure is not succeeding, but you also can't ignore all the new stuff. And so, yeah, I think that is, to me, the builder warning, if you will. And it applies to vibe coded stuff too, because just because you can vibe code it doesn't mean it should exist. That's another way of putting it.
And I mean, I grew up with film people and TV people, as you know, and one of the great kind of pieces of wisdom that they would share is from Eisenstein, the great Soviet Russian filmmaker, which is that constraints are the most important for art. You become a little bit more.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember this story. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No. This is something to yes and on.
Yeah, I remember that there was a story in the newspaper years ago about some rudimentary computing system that came up with creative ideas for ads. And it came up with them because it had such tight constraints. And, the power of narrowing the options is enormous. And I think it kind of speaks to like a lot of our careers now too, is, when you're told the world is your oyster, it's a lot harder to figure out where to go searching. Anyway, and so that power is always a double-edged sword. And that's kind of why I keep coming back to it,
I mean, as a pre-seed founder, I always tell my team that the fact that we don't have enough people, time, and money is kind of good at the beginning in a startup, because you really parse what you will be working on, what's important. And the things that are not actually priorities, we don't if you have an enormous company with many, many departments and whatnot, I can imagine that it must be so tempting to just give non-tasks to some group that is not currently working on anything, just to keep them busy, keep them employed. I never have this problem. I run a village basically where you either do one thing or the other. I mean, this is also your thing, focus. And I think what you're talking about is
I preach it because I struggle to practice it, but yes.
Yeah, but what you mean is choose.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, my coach once told me, Carol Robin once told me, pointed out that the root of the word decide is similar to homicide, suicide, regicide. We're killing the option that we haven't taken.
As a Latin
And
student, I would like to argue with this, but I get the metaphor.
okay, yes, I'm sure that that is not literally true, but in any event,
I think it
it's
comes
helped.
from cut, right? The word cut in Latin. Anyway, but yeah, you have to like split. It's there in a lot of ancient wisdoms. It's there in ancient Confucian wisdom, the splitting, the cutting in the I Ching, and that's
No, what is that?
yeah, it's the same for like splitting your army and deciding which side goes where, but also getting rid of things. Like I
Yeah.
think the metaphor is like cutting off a bamboo, so it's only the healthy parts that remain. And yeah, those you only do them you only do unpleasant things when you have to. Most people don't wake up like, I'm going to do unpleasant things. And that's very important for me. And I think this is kind of to go back to our original topic. This is really important about founders, artists, really like builders of worlds, that you do these things because you have to. Like there is something that doesn't exist or doesn't work or is going badly in society, in the world, in the economy. And like it bugs you so much that of all the available choices, you would choose one that is really, really hard because you have to. And
Yeah,
people who are religious will say this is a calling. Other people will blame their parents and in a Freudian way, however you rationalize it, it's still there. Some people wake up. This is why I criticize sometimes Girard and that everything is like copying each other. I think some people have an inner drive from their genes. I don't know. They wake up and they are like, I'm going to get shit done. Go and stop me.
yeah, I guess I've become a little less, I don't know quite the right way to put this. Like, of course, it's fascinating and to speculate about where does that come from. I guess, my limited reading about free will, but my now somewhat more extensive observation of people building great things is I'm not sure if I care anymore. In the sense that, like, why does it I've seen great things that seem to be built from a long-term inner pursuit. I've seen great things that seem to be built from an opportunistic deck slapped together at the last minute. Replit versus Uber. Like there is no inner calling. Or if there is, you just redefine. It's sort of like how, and no matter what Trump does, there are certain people who will always say he's playing 12D chess. It's sort of like that. It's like, oh, but Travis's inner calling was to create a great business, and he was hungry for that. Well, sure. I mean, I guess, but I mean, it's just not. Once you redefine the target enough, and I don't know Travis's inner heart at all, so who knows? I'm just not sure what the stakes are in answering that question, other than motivation for the individual. And I do think what ends up happening is a frequent source of hope robbery is the feeling that one must have some inevitable path, some inevitable destiny born out of your childhood seeds. I don't know. Maybe it's true, but maybe we should just improvise as we go.
That's interesting. It's again to kind of like take it back to some of the more creative and philosophical sides. Like I think it was Margaret Atwood who writes in Negotiating with the Dead, which are her lectures about writers, that there is nothing in common between writers who write great books. Like
Yeah.
you can't help that. That's often my the great problem when I try to help women in the industry, that we are such outliers in many ways. It's really hard to like dump people into like these common.
Well, not to mention the kind of success depends what you mean by success. Yeah. But if we're talking about these iconic outliers, then N is just really small.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, you leading Bloomberg Meta, your job is basically to help talent realize their potential in a way often not even fully obvious to themselves in the moment. How I'm asking this for my own selfish reasons because this is my question running into Intellect often. Like, how can I help people at scale? Is that even realistic, or should we always know that the truth is always in the one-on-one?
Well, for sure, the truth is not always in the one-on-one because writing helps people. I guess I get stuck on the question as to whether it is helping somebody achieve their potential or whether or not on some level they know where they're going, whether they want to admit it to themselves or to you. And and we're in the obstacle removal business, which is another form of the same thing, but it produces different. One implies that what you're there to do is nurture somebody's belief in themselves and help them identify and discover skills. Another view is they'll just tell you what gets out, like they'll just tell you what you need to do. And so I'm a fan of trying to think, how can I avoid needing to be smart? And if I listen to what people tell me they need, and then give them whatever I can give them that seems to make sense to me from that, that seems like highest and best use. Then over a long period of time, you develop, I guess, some instincts about something and you can share your perspective with the person. I can see this side of you and you can't kind of thing. And that can be useful. And occasionally there are some lessons that are transferable. And one of them is focus. Like I've never seen somebody build something extraordinary. Just to be clear, I'm not a builder. I'm an investor. I am an aide to builders. I'm a handmaiden to builders. I'm an ally. I'm a supporter. I'm a fan. I'm a critic. I'm a whatever. But other than some side projects here and there that I create, or my civic work, which is different, I'm not a builder. And I have yet to see a builder who isn't focused, at least for periods of time. Focus runs in campaigns, I think, basically. But yeah, anyway, so
when somebody comes in to Bloomberg Beach, like for first meeting, like I remember our first meeting, it was a lot of fun. I literally had just landed in America for the first time in my life. You were my first meeting. This was in March 2019. And you were also our first check in Interintellect. So that was like, well,
it makes me very proud. For me. We love being first.
This was so much fun. I remember the first time I flew into America, the guy at SFO asked me, what's the purpose of my visit? And I was like, I'm here to meet my Twitter friends.
Oh, I love that.
And that's exactly what I did. And then you and Sam Altman were the first two people I met. And it was that's like, amazing. I'm never leaving tech. I love this. This was so, so good. But I'm so curious. So when you first meet somebody, and, a lot of your meetings, I would imagine, are a little bit more standard than how we became friends. Like, how do you want to, like, categorize them psychologically? Like, what kind of a founder or founder duo or trio you're dealing with?
No, we don't.
Different partners, or who stays your founder, who goes to, like, James or other people in the company. So or is it just about the idea?
No, it's definitely not just about the idea.
Because like Pioneer, I know they even make you do the Big Five test when you're applying. Like they actually create a psychology test.
Yeah, I just don't know if there's any value to that. And I don't want to tax somebody's time unless I strongly believe that it's useful. Well, first, we're really public about this. And so, you can go on our website and see all the criteria we use for investing. And it's funny because, we published it to GitHub, in part because as a founder myself, I was like, why are all these investors so opaque? This just seems like completely unnecessary. And so we wanted to, as a new attacker to the industry, we wanted to reverse that and do the opposite. And so that's kind of just one thing and oftentimes founders will say to me something like, well, okay, but really, what are the criteria? And I'm like, no. If it's one of our criteria, it's there. And if it's not, we should put it there. And
somebody asks me something like that about Interintellect, like, what's the shortcut? I'm like, everything is on the website. Like, it tells more about the person asking the question and how maybe, opaque they are being in their lives than you.
Yeah. I think that's right. The questions that they ask reveal a lot. And then, as you know, at our firm, any one of us, the most junior member of the team through to the three equal partners, me, James, and Karen, can say yes to any investment. So there's never like a hierarchy quite of decision-making. Now, granted, the partners do the vast majority of it. And we often want to be involved, but it doesn't have to be that way. And then what goes to who is sometimes a matter of relationship, sometimes a matter of expertise of what the person's working on. And it's sort of a bunch of fuzzy constraints. I mean, it's like, how do you figure out when somebody's like, hey, I'm moving to a new city, I want to make friends, who might they be good friends with? It's not like a hard and fast rule. And then in terms of the founder, first of all, we're trying to make sure we want to work for the person. That's just subjective. Do we trust them? Do we like how they think? And then do we believe they have the capability to build something extraordinary? And oftentimes you just can't figure that out. from meeting a person. So if you get some spidey sense that they can't for some reason, but I've made so many bad calls on that over the years. I just don't trust my own judgment on that. I mean, I remember one VC once said I can like look into the founder's eyes and just know. And it's like,
Well,
really?
I hate it when people say, I hate that when people say that because
Yeah.
what am I supposed to do about it? So you look at me, you're like, oh, she doesn't
Right,
look
it's back
like
to
a
the founder. It's like,
and there's nothing I can do about it. That's like racism.
And look, we've
Like, what can I
invested
do
in
about it?
charismatic founders. We've invested in, emotionally deaf mute people. We have invested in people of all ages and backgrounds, founders in their 60s, founders in their, well, actually, I think the oldest was probably in his 50s when we invested, but then in his 60s by the time, whatever. Founders in their teens, like whatever. Have we literally invested in a founder in their teens? I'm pretty sure we have. We've definitely invested in the early 20s.
First person I ever angel invested in was under 18 and couldn't receive the funds for a little bit. I was trying to wire him. Yeah.
Amazing. I love that.
He's doing really well.
I think the nice thing about being an investor is I don't have to have a definitive view on that. And I remember when I started a company, somebody once said to me something like, oh, we don't like solo founder companies. I wasn't solo at that point, but they were saying that. I was like, oh, that guy Jeff Bezos seemed to do okay. And then somebody else was like, well, we don't like companies with split headquarters. And I was like, I picked out some other example. And so I don't know, like it just all strikes me as somewhat voodoo wisdom, and I just try to avoid voodoo wisdom. And the one thing that I will say matters is we look for data sources better than our own opinions. And the data source better than our own opinion is somebody who knows the person deeply. So if somebody we trust says to us, hey, this person should go right to the front of the line, that matters a lot. And so like Ryan from Flexport, the person who introduced us, who knows great founders, was like, this is an amazing founder. It's a little different if it's like a good friend of mine from college who might be great, but may or may not know. Actually, two of my friends from college are founders we've invested in. So in that case, maybe there's an exception. But yeah, so it's kind of like that. Other people's opinion goes a long way. In the case of Replit, I knew Zach Sims from Codecademy who'd flown to Jordan to recruit Amjad. I was like, wow, that's an endorsement. And then got to know Amjad over time. And yeah, just going company after company. I mean, aerospace intelligence, there was a great technical.
By the way, Amjad is an investor in Interintellect as well.
Awesome. A great technical person at Google who was like, I really like this guy's approach. And I sat down with the guy and it was awesome. And so person after person is like that. When there isn't an outside read, we try not to let that bias us against investing because it's just non-data. It's not bad data. And we don't want all the circles to be correlated to each other. But that's some of how we think about it.
So you've been doing this for quite a few years now. And I'm really curious how, when we're talking about historical turmoil, I mean, I've run Interintellect for 6 years.
Yeah, tech used to be boring. The world was boring. I remember talking to Brad Stone, who's now the editor-in-chief of Business Week, 2-3 years after we started beta. I was like, what do you guys write about? It's all so boring right now. And that is no longer our problem.
Not a problem right now, yeah. I mean, Interintellect lived through the lockdowns, EA falling apart, crypto bust.
It actually raises a point. Well, I don't know why EA falling apart is a major event for... Why is EA falling apart a major event for Interintellect?
It's interesting to me, and we often reflect on the fact that there are all these subculture spurts, and some of them go very badly, some of them go okay, some of them stabilize, and then Interintellect just is like there. And we want it to be something that's like an institution where there can be different hypes and trends and fads and whatever.
Like a university.
And it does not touch us because we don't get kind of entangled with any of them, and that's just quite interesting to me. But I'm really curious, and maybe this is the right point to segue to this. Like, if you've been doing this throughout all these historical turmoils as well, like, do you see, just since you started Bloomberg Beta, like different eras for different talents to shine, or are there like temporarily successful talent types?
I mean, I don't think it's talent types. I think there are certain backgrounds that are really useful at certain moments. And so, for example, being at a fast-growing company is useful for building fast-growing companies because it's a trade and you observe the trade being practiced. So it's super different to have been at Google when it was growing much faster than when it turned into the land of balkanized bureaucracy. And then it just depends which part of Google you're part of. And of course, the individual can always, transcend their environment. But I think that the phases are that little pockets kind of wink in and out of existence. And at any given time, we're like, where are all the great founders now? It used to be that, you could find certain, but the pockets get arbitraged away very quickly. The thing that I think historical patterns really remind me of that I did not realize when I became an investor. So like we're a day zero investor, as you know. We're happy to invest as early as possible. We'll invest through, let's say, call it the seed stage. We were focused on a couple of things before others were, like the future of work. We were the first firm to focus on that. We were the first firm to focus on AI over my objection at the time. I was wrong. And what I've realized is if you're going to make an early investment, you're actually making a macro bet. Because I'd hear people saying things like, well, but that's a terrible time to be in that market. It's like, I don't care. If this company's going to work, it's going to have to survive 10 years of success and not. And there are certain things that are opportunities at certain moments, the sharing economy, whatever. So I'm not trying to suggest that there aren't valid tectonic plate shifting, but I am trying to suggest that if you are going to build an enduring institution, survival of a robust, frustrating, unpredictable set of conditions is essential. And so you need the cockroaches that can survive that. I mean, to pick the Katarina Fake term, but did we know you were going to have to live through a banking collapse? Like, who knew?
Oh my God, yeah. But I was thinking, I was recently on an Amtrak train trying to get to New York City, from New York City to Washington, D.C. And then we were stopped on the track and we were stuck on the train for 9 hours. And it was so interesting because I used to be a pretty neurotic, very high-strung person. And I was like sitting there with my laptop and thought, well, I have Wi-Fi, I can work. And everybody around me was like having a mental breakdown. And I was sitting there and thinking like, being a founder makes this like not even a 2 for me. Like my blood pressure did not respond to this situation.
Yeah.
It's like your stoicism level is just...
Yeah, because you just experience all kinds of stuff. I mean, I remember the startup that I did. Somebody once called me from a portfolio company. They're like, we are screwed. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Like, we only have 6 months of cash left. I was like, you're going to be fine. We'll figure this out. I mean, sometimes 6 months of cash is like, you're screwed because you don't realize that that's actually not that much time. And so I've had cases where founders like, we're fine. We have 6 months of cash left. I was like, you haven't even started fundraising yet. Like, get out there. And, I remember we had a term sheet canceled on us in the startup that I started the Wednesday night before Thanksgiving with 2 weeks of cash left in the bank. Like, that's hard. There are harder things than that, but that's hard. And I do think that there is a certain fragility that some people have had when their life has been easy the whole time. And look, I've had a relatively easy life in the scheme of things, like intact family, like loving parents, yes, my dad passed away when I was younger, but it's not, I consider myself I grew up in New York at a period of time when that was a heyday. But, my family like story includes moving continents because of war and being persecuted. And so it's like when something bad happens at a startup, it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's like, we'll figure it out. And I do think that, as you said, building something and going through those ups and downs, it steals you. And I think that being steeled is important. Now, the flip side of that is a lot of people can then become numb, and numb is really bad too. And so so many things in startups are paradoxes. And one of the paradoxes is, how can you be completely even keel when the world goes sideways while sensitive to listening for conditions that may in fact matter?
Maybe this is not a politically correct question, but fuck it. What do you think about Gen Z in this sense? I mean, we hear and read so many different takes on whether they are too sensitive, not sensitive enough, extremely entrepreneurial geniuses, or completely lazy people who don't know how to work. Either they are brain dead or
I think all these these
it's a Rorschach test, right? It's a Rorschach test generation. So what is your read of the Rorschach test from this particular angle?
Well, I actually don't know if I believe in generational differences. Like, meaning, Of course, younger people are systematically different from older people in lots of ways because they're young and the older people are old. They have different life stages. But are the young people of today materially different from the young people of 20 years ago? And I'm not sure if this is getting at your question. I'm not sure that that's true. Like, the young people are lazy thing. Somebody did something on this then I have to go find it, but, has been around for at least 100 years, if not 200 years. And so I'm not sure, it's so hard to tell because we're then assessing it from our own shifted vantage point. And I think an important thing for a builder is to not let I read this in a draft piece from a tech leader I really respect, and she said that it's often the autocrats who use the language of the inevitable. Builders don't adhere to the language of the inevitable, in the sense that if it were inevitable, there would be no need for builders. You just let somebody else do it. Builders are agents in history. And so I think if you're an agent, thinking of yourself as kind of systematically, well, but I'm Gen Z and therefore I should, ... Maybe if it's useful for you, I'm just not sure,
I love this, and I would love to read the piece on the inevitable because it's one of my other manias that I think about a lot, which is that tyranny is a tragedy. Because in the theater, it's in tragedies where the options are constantly narrowing. So say when you start Romeo and Juliet, in the first scene, anything is possible, right? They haven't met yet. As after every single scene, the options narrow down dramatically until in the end, the only option left is death for both of them. And what tyrants do to your worldview is they make a mock version of this, where after each event, you are told that now you have fewer and fewer options until they can position themselves that it's not bad that you can't vote or you don't have democratic rights anymore because they are the only option.
Humanity is cursed. And the only person, it turns out, who can save humanity is me, says the tyrant, Mars colonizer, etc.
Me or death, right?
Yeah.
Me or death.
Guns to heads.
Great choices. Yeah.
And they've often told the story themselves. And look, the paradox here is that builders can be histrionic storytellers. And that is an important skill to have. The ability to get somebody to see something as bigger than what it looks like is part of inducing the support in the chicken and egg problem that is a builder of like, how do I get users if I have no money? And how do I get money if I have no users? Well, you got to make somebody believe. Yeah. You got to make somebody see something that isn't there yet. And so that is part of the toolkit.
What do you think are some of the elements of history today? It's 2025, end of June. What's going on in the world that you think founders, builders should pay more attention to? Right? We all are a little bit behind, a little bit too forward and in time, and oftentimes we don't see the present very clearly.
Yeah, it's really hard for me to know because each individual is so different. I don't know that I have good systematic advice on that. I think the only thing I just say is what tends to be out of the conversation is things that change gradually, even if they're quick. Something can be quick and gradual, by the way. We tend to think of gradual as slow, and maybe I'm not using the word right, but I mean, something that's steady and quick, we tend to ignore. We tend to pay attention to spiky things because they're more interesting. And things that are just out of the zeitgeist. So I'll give you an example of a trend that I think is wildly underappreciated by most builders. It's a little more appreciated now because of the pronatalist thing. But, I think I wrote a piece about the silver unicorn, building for older populations in like 2017 with iGen Poo from National Domestic Workers Alliance. If you want a growth market, build for old people. But most builders in tech tend to be young. They can't relate to it yet. The way they relate to older people is like, well, my aunt is dying and therefore I should have some service that helps me care for her kind of thing, which is part of it. But relating to old people as thriving members of society is just a thing that most builders tend not to do.
I blame also targeted advertising. Like when I turned 40 recently, I started seeing completely different ads. And now I know that there are senior dating apps and all sorts of other products. And beforehand, I didn't know about it because Amazon and Instagram and any other place where I would get algorithmic recommendations didn't tell me that these products even existed. Do you think that it's going to be a more senior heavy scene, founders? Like you mentioned that you invested in a...
I think that founders are...
Yeah.
Tech founders are a relatively new thing in the scheme of history. So of course it's going to get older because they'll age.
Yeah. That's so interesting. We tend to talk about talent also as something that can be fixed, right? Like we think, people are born with, or born at least with some kind of promise or limitation. But then, more and more research is coming out, again, to go back to the senior question, about like late bloomers. Henry Oliver was on this podcast and he writes about late bloomers. Stephen Grimblett writes about second chances, all the people who first founded their things or wrote their things or composed their thing, whatever their output was. And, some forms of intelligence really flourish in older age. I'm really curious what you think about becoming talented. So if there is a person listening to this podcast episode or watching us right now, and they feel that they are not talented, but they want to, or feel that they have some talent, but they want to become more talented. Do you think that's possible to do? And within technological scenes, how would they go about it?
I mean, it's sort of like, I don't know why tech is different from any other domain on that. If somebody said, I want to be a talented writer, how do they go about it? It's like, start writing. Are you going to be Hemingway if you put in the effort? Not necessarily. Are you going to get good enough to be able to be a professional writer? Maybe. And so I don't know. I don't know that it's any different. I think we tend to treat builders and founders of tech companies in particular as if they're made of magic. And they can do something that's extraordinary, but so can an extraordinary athlete, and so can an extraordinary parent, and so can an extraordinary doctor. And I don't know that it's in theory any different other than what you're studying is different.
That's so interesting. And there's also the kind of apprenticeship idea that Otto Translucence, the blogger, calls becoming a magician. Eric Huel, who was also on this podcast, talks about like creating Einsteins, which is that just that work with a very talented person, like sit next to the talented person for as many years as humanly possible. And that's the best shortcut you will ever have, right? Like with regard to some types of outlier, types about being an outlier, you can't really get there linearly. You have to go to the weirdest, greatest person and just see them widen the horizon.
Yeah. And I guess I'm just resistant to the whole idea that there is a can't or can in this, because it just seems like there are so many different ways and we know so little about it. And I wish there were an instruction manual for how to achieve greatness. I think that the truest thing I've ever heard about it is that most people are not prepared to pay the price that it would cost them to achieve that form of greatness. And I mean, some of the folks that we've, alluded to here on this call have paid an enormous personal price.
And is that inevitable?
No. I mean, I think, first of all, I think the price differs by person. Mm-hmm. And some people achieve greatness through luck.
Yeah.
And, and so, no, I don't think it's inevitable. I think it's a really good question, though. But I do think paying some price is inevitable, usually because you're just making choices. And so the choices
the opportunity cost is there.
Choices generally have an opportunity cost. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that the recent kind of right-wingization of some parts of tech come from the pursuit of excellence? Or do you think it's more like the oft discussed backlash against wokeism? Is the kind of right move of some parts of technology today, does that just arise? Is that a natural consequence of seeking excellence and believing that some people are just better than other people? Or is
I'm not sure I follow. Why would it be why would that even be a candidate explanation?
Because you can compare left and right wing ideologies as a more egalitarian view of the world where it's more nurture than nature. And you can associate more nature-driven ideas of excellence, of let the best win, winner takes all. I think in tech, when I entered tech, these two ideas were relatively balanced. I don't think that they are very.
I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I think it's very hard for me to essentialize left and right on that too, in the sense that, the right seems to talk a lot about identity these days, much more than the left used to. And with the horseshoe do-si-do that we have of a spinning horseshoe, I just don't know. And then, like, explain to me why for 50 years, tech leaders tended to lean left politically. And so I don't know that there's an inevitability to it. I mean, a lot of it is geography. And yeah, so I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know that there's anything inevitable about it, but I do think the pendulum swings. And I think, to me, the biggest swing has been tech became powerful. Tech used to be an attacker, and then it became powerful. And once you get attacked as power, everything changes. You're no longer the pirate. You're the admiral in the Navy. Then what do? Your identity is I'm the pirate. And yeah.
What are they going to do? Because now it's still the shock of being attacked, right? Like, we're just like, some tech people just got their first kind of sucker punch and are like studying themselves.
I mean, what do they do is we see what they do is they become bitter, angry, certainly, how dare you criticize me? I'm the one bringing all the value here. And so I think anybody with power who sees themselves as a victim, I am inherently skeptical of. The worst actors with power seem to believe that they are victims. And that's because we're all victims of something, somebody's misunderstanding. But, like, honestly, cry me a river for the venture capitalist who no longer gets his calls returned by the president.
So are you hopeful about the next 20 years? Do you think that we're past the worst part?
I don't know how to think about that. Like, one place where I agree with Elon is like optimism, pessimism. I don't know. Let's just work. And so I don't know, like, show me any 20-year period and tell me good or bad, other than the extreme examples of World War. It seems like every period that's been great in terms of some populations has been awful for others. So there are many things I'm hopeful and optimistic about, and many things I'm worried about, but I just don't know. I'm maybe just not. I don't know how to think about overall. Is it a green light or a red light? I mean, I really don't know how to think about that.
It seems to me that you have a kind of timeless understanding of talent and building across different decades, where the main, if I'm like going to just like paraphrase here of how I understood it, which is, that, I mean, like how I'm trying to build an institution, that you are a kind of point of stability, empires rise and fall in some weird sense, trends come and go, but the real talent, the real ideas kind of survive, and they are very durable because they respond maybe to a timeless need.
I mean, I definitely think that the real ideas survive, but that's also just true because of survivorship bias. So again,
there must be a cemetery of great ideas somewhere.
Yeah, and what I definitely think changes, by the way, is the skills that are valued in different eras changes. I mean, obviously that's true, just simply because of, like, let's just take sexism.
Yeah.
The intelligence of a woman has been valued differently by the economy at different points in time. So it's very clear that, the ability to, like, type really fast, irrelevant in some eras, very relevant in others. Thinking algorithmically, knowing how to climb a social ladder, like, all these things are, I do think that the skill mix that is valued shifts with time. So it's not like what counts as talent in one era will count as talent in another.
Yeah.
That I don't believe. What I do believe is that if you build something that satisfies an intrinsic human need, and you navigate the 1,000 traps required to have the thing not die on the way there, which is not as simple as just build something somebody wants. It's like, build something somebody wants, win the trust of investors in order to get enough money to be, just picking the lane of just venture-backed founder, win enough trust from investors in order to be able to do it, convince the right talent at the right time, and don't overthink it on talent. I mean, it's like, I'll answer by analogy with a writer or a chef. It's sort of like, is the skill required to be a great chef timeless? In some sense, yes. People have to taste your food. In another sense, no. Maybe you're a chef who has to build his own or her own restaurant. Maybe you're a person who is the private chef for the king. Maybe cooking with flour is important now. Cooking with sugar is important now. And so there are some principles. I mean, I think the patterns tend to repeat, but what fills them up, what animates them is quite different.
Yeah. Oh my God, this has to go into a book. This was wonderful. This is such a good summary of like this constant trade-off that we are making because we want to stay relevant. We want to respond to changes. You don't want to become like an ossified, I mean, I don't want to bring religious examples, but, there are religious institutions that have a very hard time responding to changes in society, but you don't want to be like an identity-less little flame in the wind that any external event can disorient. I would like to spend the last couple of minutes we have talking about the future of work. I mean, this is Bloomberg Beta's area of expertise. This is why you started the firm.
Well, it's definitely our area of focus. I'll just say we try to be as expert as possible. Somebody once introduced me as an expert on the future of work. I'm like, I actually literally don't know how one can, even in theory, philosophically speaking, be an expert in the future, but I certainly care a lot about it.
Are you like, if I knew I would be a startup founder, because I don't, I just invest in other.
I mean, look, I need a portfolio of bets because I don't know. Somebody's often like, well, do you believe it'll be this way or that way? I was like, I don't know. Like, but don't you need to know? I'm like, no, I get to take both. I can bet on red and blue in this casino.
Oh, that's such a great way of putting it. Yeah. You can monetize your uncertainty as encouragement. So go and surprise me.
It's the perfect way to put it. Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about what are, I think you get a bit of a flash forward into what's going to happen or what experiments will be going down soon because you invest in them to happen. What are some of the most interesting trends that maybe a average Joe like myself, I quote unquote only know about this as an employer, as a CEO. And I do see generational changes, geographical differences, a lot of, new things happening. But I would love to just learn from you here. What would be some things that people listening to this, watching this should read up on or think about?
So I think about where, the science fiction line about the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. I think about that a lot. And I think about where are fascinating things happening on the time scale that you care about. So it's like, if I was looking ahead 20 years, maybe I'd be more interested in basic scientific research. As a person who's more oriented in my own psychology toward, things that you can make progress on in a couple of years, let's say, I spend a lot of time thinking about which tools allow you to build faster and better. And so obviously all the AI tools, that part's probably obvious. I spend a lot of time thinking about how do people form their opinions, and group chat has been my fascination, as I think you know, for a long time.
Thank you for being in my group chat. I really appreciate it. It's a very competitive thing for you to get you into.
No, I mean, I show up where interesting people say interesting things that I can learn from in a respectful environment, which is, one of the cool things about that group chat is, by the way, is if you ask me, where do all those people live? I have no idea. If you ask me, where are they politically? I have no idea. If you ask me, where are they occupationally? I have no idea. But I know a lot about what they think about philosophy, books, movies, some news at the moment. It was the only group chat that did not turn into a whole Iran conversation.
Oh, my group chat. Yeah. My group
which I appreciate about it.
Yeah.
But group chat in general, I think, is one of these underrated things.
Yeah.
And the truth is, I'm thinking a lot about attitudes toward children and parenting these days, maybe as my kids get older. And I see this funny dichotomy, at least in professional PMC, professional managerial class in the West, which is, on the one hand, I don't know that I've ever seen parenting emphasized more among the cohort that I'm part of as a wonderful thing. Well, sorry, wonderful isn't the right thing, an enjoyable thing. I see dads pushing strollers in ways that growing up in New York, I don't think I saw. And they have smiles on their faces. They're not doing it out of some obligation. And at the same time, obviously, the rate at which people are having children is falling. And so is that because there's a bifurcation? Is that because of like certain lifestyles that would have been considered alternative of like living alone or not having kids, let alone Burning Man alternative, all kinds of forms of, of gender bending, whatever, I don't know how to make sense of that paradox. And I think about that paradox a lot.
I mean, I think that's something that in our group chat we do talk a lot about, and I have a lot of thoughts, because it's one of those great questions where I'm not satisfied with any answer.
Yeah, the unanswered.
Everything is both true and not true. Like
that's right.
That's true, but that's also true, and then you are left with 100 facts, but the parts don't add up into a whole.
Yeah, I think that's right, and how we relate to the biggest decisions in our lives, where we live, whether to have children, who to spend our time with, our partners in life. I think those tend to be so consequential that they just reveal a lot about what we are all doing now. And I'd love to see more founders taking on, these domains where we figure out all these paradoxes. I mean, what does the great group chat startup look like? As you know, I've spent a lot of time on labor organizing. It's one of these areas that's important, enduring, and out of favor, at least in terms of how much people are interested in it. And I see a lot more demand and interest for people to work together to realize their power. And the other thing I've been thinking about a lot is there was this paper about how AI is good for deprogramming conspiracy theorists.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether our interactions with chatbots, how they will shape our participation in society. Because AI,
that's
like
what I'm building
media,
about, right? Like that's
for sure.
The idea.
I mean, AI and like just say social media. Social media has an inbuilt economic incentive to encourage addiction. It also has an inbuilt economic incentive to encourage dispersion of thoughts, like to put you in your pocket and reinforce you. AI definitely has the first one, like the more tokens I use, the more I pay. Does it also have the second one? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if AI might actually have an inbuilt chatbots I'm talking about here, have an inbuilt incentive toward getting people to converge because it's easier for alignment. And so I'm just not, I don't know, I think there's an unsettled question there, and I'd love to see builders work to settle it.
On it. That sounds great.
Please do. Might as well be you.
I think convergence is, last January, I had a whole little period of panic in my life about convergence. And I actually left group chats because I was like, there's too much convergence here.
That's interesting. I think group chats can play either way on that. I was just talking about this with my wife this morning. And some group chats are echo chambers, but they get boring quickly. Group chat is a safe space for dialogue.
You have to,
the one on Jews is like, we have people who have widely different views on Israel politics, and the differences are part. So I think group chat can break both ways.
But it's because of the ethos and the moderation, because you have to fight the entropy. I'm a linguist, right? And I spent 5 years looking at chats before I started Interintellect and reading every dialogue ever recorded from every crash planes, black box, the Apollo mission. You start seeing text as a kind of architecture. And I was in group chats December, January, just now, where I started seeing in the Matrix, everybody's saying the same thing. They don't remember because they don't even how chats work is you don't see the previous pages. But I have a very, very, very good memory for text. And I was like, guys, this is I felt like I was in a vortex, an intellectual vortex. I was like, I got that panic that people get when your identity, your core self is threatened, you're coming for my brain. And I can completely imagine that AI without proper intervention and actual products being built to not allow that to happen. And I don't think you can do it one-on-one. I think you need other people there, because it's people being aware of similarity is when this mimetic thing switches on. And you differentiate immediately. You never want to be the same as the other one. If two women show up in the same dress simultaneously, one of them will put on a shawl. but you have
No,
to
it's
stay.
I think difference and similarity are fractal in that way,
Absolutely.
in the sense that like I love a New Yorker,
Yeah.
but I hate somebody from the East Side.
Oh, that's interesting. It's like the Ewoks, like
I
one.
love somebody from the Upper West Side, but if they live north of 86th Street, it's like a completely different planet.
What? I'm on 90th. Come on, it's great.
It's just a different planet. I'm
That's
not saying
true.
it's bad. I'm just saying it's a different planet.
The median age on my street is like people who remember the Civil War personally. It's great.
Love it.
That's how we do it. Roy Bahat, thank you so much for being here. This was such a pleasure.
Thank
You're the
you.
absolute best. And here's to building the future.
Well, that was great.